We want to start by sharing some information, some basic information with our audience about the achievement gap. What is it exactly? How does it manifest itself nationally? Let's talk about that first, and then locally or statewide in Connecticut.
Well, basically the achievement gap is a gap in the performance of minority and lower income students in comparison to their white counterparts on standardized assessments.
Right.
And often I like to refer to it as the preparation gap rather than the achievement gap, but we will talk about that a little bit more.
Why do you refer to it as a preparation gap?
I think that a large part of the achievement gap occurs because students are coming in at various levels when they are entering into the K through 12 public school system, and the inequities in the ways in which they're coming to school really need to be addressed, because that foundation that they're coming in with is really at a lower level at where their white counterparts are. Mm-hmm. And there are a variety of reasons for that.
Can we share some data, just a few data points about the difference? You know, what are the differences in grade 4, for example?
Mm-hmm. Well, I looked at it relative to grade 3, grade 6, and grade 8. And just in terms of looking at, with this year's assessment, and just looking at the reading and the mathematics part of that. For instance, in math, black children, by and large, only 31% met goal, okay, you know, versus whites who were 57%. So when you come to 6th grade, then you're looking at 33% for mathematics for blacks versus 91% being at goal or above in mathematics. If you look at the 8th grades, you're looking at essentially 27.7, so we can round that to 28% if you're black, meeting goal or above, versus their white counterparts at 73%. If you look in terms of the reading, 3rd grade, we're 24% in terms of black versus our white counterparts at 65%. In terms of 6th grade, 52%. For black, 85%. For white, if you're looking at 8th grade, you're looking at 53%, okay, for blacks in terms of passing at the reading versus 75% of whites. So you see all the way across the board.
There's that gap.
Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned there are lots of reasons for it. Let's try to give a kind of landscape look at what some of those reasons might be.
Wow. Good gracious. Let me add one more data point. Connecticut's achievement gap actually grows larger the longer our children are in the public schools in Connecticut. So when you start to talk about what are the reasons, there are many. There are many. And when you start to talk about the internal and external issues that affect our children, you can't help but say that our educators have a lot to do with the way that our kids feel empowered to learn and ready to learn and willing to learn. So, you know, we hear in the public school system lots of excuses, too many, quite frankly. We hear quite often lots of blaming on children. Oh, the kids are misbehaved, the kids are poor mannered, especially in urban systems. I heard it yesterday, made me really angry. Our kids are misbehaved, our kids are angry, our kids are all these different reasons that come that put the blame and point the finger at children and why they don't do well. But there's so much else. There are environmental issues. There's lack of preparation. There's teacher quality, administrator quality, poverty. There's, I mean.
Yeah, when you look at it now, I'm a person from the public schools.
And so am I. I'm a product of the public school system, New York City public schools.
And in terms of looking at that, you know, versus, you know, the whole issue of public and private, I mean, and I don't think really that you can look at any one piece. You really can, and so you can't say pretty much it's laying primarily at the door of the teacher, because a lot happens even before the students walk through that door. Right. And at the end of 5.5 to 6 hours, they return back to where they are. But you also have to look at, you know, as think it's not just the environmental factors in terms of what is immediately impacting them, but you have to look at the city governments, you have to look at the state governments, you then have to look at the federal governments. What are the pieces that are involved in that? And I don't think that there's, even though I'm not a conspiratorial type of person, but I don't think it is by accident that the public sector is failing to the degree it is. And there's some intrinsic pieces in that, because, you know, if you have a highly non-educated populace, you can do what you want with them. You know, they don't vote, they don't, you know. So there are a lot of there are a lot of advantages for having a certain degree of your populace less educated. But in terms of looking at that disparity, one of the things that stymies us in public, okay, is just that we are held to actually greater scrutiny in many instances than some of the public and charter. And, you know, wherever people find that they want to put their kids, I think it's good. And if children are learning in those environments, I think are good. However, I do think that the platform needs to be equal. So, because some of the things that some charter schools and some private schools are able to get away with, we can't do that in public. And so, you know, for instance, whatever comes through our doors, we have to deal with.
We do too. What are some of the things you're thinking?
But in terms of, you know, where the difference comes, and I know this debate kind of wages, you know, back and forth. In terms of, yes, are we all sometimes picking from the same? Yes, but by the end of the getting you to maybe take your child out of here in many different ways, you know, that's done, then the pool kind of concentrates down. But in private, you're paying for that. That money is directly out of your pocket. Of course you're going to be, hey, wait a minute, what's happening? So versus something that's happening through the tax base, so you don't really feel it. Yeah, they tell me, you know, I'm paying for education, but you don't feel it as much.
Well, let's zero in on what some of the other factors are for this gap. Do you have any other?
The list continues. I mean,
Health.
You touched on, you know, getting with what you deal with. And again, we're not blaming kids. I don't think anybody sitting up here is blaming kids, but the bottom line is children come with lots of issues. They really do. They come with, you know, emotional issues, social development issues. They come with a gamut of issues. I mean, there's health, like you said, there's mental, there's all kinds of...
And how many of our children are not tested, even though they get the kind of general vision screening, but they don't get hearing all the time. They don't get, you know, other kinds of things that could be factoring into why maybe, you know, little Jamal can't sit still. And it may not be a need for Ritalin or anything like that, but there may be some other factors involved with that. Also, too, you know, what is the state of the household? Are they homeless? A number of our children, and that's a growing population all across the country of homelessness people and whole families, and some people who are homeless and working every day. And yet they can't. So how does that impact? Where's the quiet place for you to do homework and things like that? So there's so many different factors, you know, if people are losing their jobs.
Another issue that, you know, that I deal with currently at my school is the issue of transiency. Since the beginning of the school year, I've had 45 new students come into my school. And if I look at the files for some of these students, they have been in somewhere it's up to, you know, 3 or 4 different schools before they've gotten to me. And so, you know, so there's a lack of stability sometimes, you know, with the student in terms of their educational path. There's also this pervasiveness of low expectations. I think that comes from a variety of different places. It could come from the household, it could come from the school itself, it could come from people in the local government who look at students of color and say, well, they don't want to learn. And that's not true. I've not met the child yet who has come to school who doesn't want to do well.